Welcome to the Smashville Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your trade addict host, Andrew Banta, joined by our analyst who swears he can predict the future, Will Ott. Get ready for armchair analysis, friendly banter, and a whole lot of fantasy fun. Welcome back to Smashville Fantasy Football, everybody. This week we have trades, and more trades. At this point of the season, I think people are deciding if they need to win now or if they need to win in a hopeful playoff run. There's been some trades both in real life and in our fantasy league that have a focus on either short-term or long-term viability. So we'll get into a few of those as we carry on. But first, I think I'll review our previous week's hot takes. Last week, Will predicted that the Meg would win her first game in week 6. As we'll see when we highlight the matchup, that didn't happen. It wasn't as close as the week before either. So she's still looking for her first win. Maybe it'll come next week, but I hope not because she's against me. I'm going to have to give her my best shot here because there's no way I'm going to let her have bragging rights over me if I can help it of being her first and only win. And then I predicted the Commanders would lose to the Ravens, but Jaden Daniels would still exceed his point projection of 20.46 points. And ding, ding, ding. Winner, chicken dinner. We went completely against each other. You thought the Commanders would win. Jaden Daniels might underperform. I liked what I saw from the Ravens before. I didn't get to watch this game, but I thought they'd give him a good shot. Jaden Daniels actually had no rush touchdowns in a pretty bad rushing day, like 20-something yards, but he got it done in the air. He had his most passing yards so far season to date. He had 2 passing touchdowns, so solid game all around, and just barely exceeded that point total prediction. I think it was predicted 20.46, and it looks like it was altered after the fact to 20.01 as a projection, but fantasy points 20.96. So surpassed that by a little bit either way. I'll take that any
that
week.
Counts.
If I get in the 20s any week from him, I'm happy. So I've been happy with Jaden Daniels all but one game this season.
I will also briefly talk about the Ravens-Commanders game. Derrick Henry had 24 carries.
He might be the top scoring player potentially, or excluding quarterbacks. No, he's
All players,
not,
Lamar
but
Jackson.
He is in top 5 in the other 4 quarterbacks. So he's the top running back or wide receiver position
and
player.
Jaden Daniels is number 3, so
yeah,
got to be happy with that.
If you do season average under Yahoo, it excludes the buys from the calculation. Jaden Daniels 4th. I'm not sure why, because Love would leapfrog him based on the average.
Because he didn't start a couple games.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
That makes me feel better about keeping him.
Yeah, he's number 2 based on average. Jackson, Love, Baker Mayfield, big surprise of the season. And Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow is up there as well. And then Derrick Henry, top among your running backs and wide receiver positions. Great year once they figured out they need to use them. As far as matchups from week 6 in our league, my team No Fading on Jaden defeated Wu-Tang Financial pretty handily, 138-ish to 89. Crunchy Leaves, our commissioner Chris, beat the Meg 94 to 79. Not a high scoring effort there by either of them, but the Meg really suffered with Dak Prescott. The Cowboys looked anemic. Prescott's not been blowing anyone away this year, but he's been at least roughly serviceable. Big letdown against the Lions. She also had some zeros and low-scoring players. Dontavian Wicks got injured fairly early in the game. Yeah, in the first half. A potential breakout candidate. He had been getting some more opportunities, more targets his way, but now he has a shoulder injury and is considered week to week. Trey Tucker got her 0 points, so that was rough too.
Piggybacking the Wicks thing, the fact that Jordan Love is back, Romeo Doubs is on suspension for a week. Some of those catches were inflated because of Doubs not being there. I would not be surprised if running a Green Bay wide receiver would actually be a worse situation than running 2 of Houston Texans wide receivers. It's just going to be inconsistent. You're going to see one of them ball out and the other ones are going to be famine, especially with Josh Jacobs in the backfield. The Green Bay Packers wide receiving core is going to be more difficult to predict than the Houston Texans.
The Texans, who are their top guys now? Because Tank Dell's maybe one of the top guys now.
Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell are the 2 healthy ones. Nico Collins is the one on IR.
Injured.
You also have Mixon, who's like a great running back. So Jordan Love's going to be more interested in checking down to Tucker Kraft or Musgrave if he's healthy. With CJ Stroud and the talent on his wide receivers as just like the raw talent, I see the wide receivers in Houston being a bigger upside than the Green Bay wide receivers. Expecting Wicks to be consistent, even without the injury, is a toss-up. He might win you one game, but then cost you 3 games because he doesn't put out enough numbers. And Jordan Love in the first quarter threw to 8 different targets. If he throws the ball 20 times, your guy might only be targeted once or twice just from those numbers alone.
Yeah, Jordan's spreading the love, right?
Yes, he is. Done a great job. Dad joke of the day.
Yeah, you have to like Tank Dell more than ever now.
Gotta continue it.
Dropped him. That was Chris, wasn't it?
Yeah, they dropped Tank Dell. I picked him up.
Good pickup.
Now I have Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell. So
Stephon Diggs, I've always loved.
That's not what you said during the draft. I'm pretty sure during the draft you said that he was not going to be good. We'll have to run that back. Okay, let me make a note of that. We're calling it out.
Historically, I have loved Stephon Diggs. Maybe there was a point when I doubted him at the draft. There's Adam Thielen, and I know I was more down on him, and he's disappeared this year. We'll have to check and see if I'm eating my words there.
We'll add it to the corrections for next week.
Sure.
If I'm right. If I'm wrong, we're going to completely ignore it.
Worst eater around had a bounce back week with a big win over Simple Jack, 130-54. His guys looked a lot better this week. David Montgomery had a good game. Jalen Hurts had a good game. Tyrone Tracy Jr. Wilson had a good game. His second good game in a row, finally. I'm a little worried about him going forward, though, because the Jets are the newest recipients of Devante Adams in a trade. I'm curious how that's going to affect Garrett Wilson's targets going forward.
It could open him up.
I don't know. I'd put money. Well, I wouldn't put real money, but I'd put Monopoly.
You would put money, Monopoly bucks.
Monopoly bucks on him starting to look more like weeks 1 through 3 again after getting a buttload of targets the past 2 weeks, and now you're bringing in Devante Adams. I tried to buy low on Garrett Wilson and get a trade from worst eater around a couple weeks ago, and these past 2 weeks I was like, darn it, why didn't I get him? And now seeing Devante Adams go there, I feel like I dodged a bullet there because he might have his upside cut out from under him now if Adams is going to soak up targets from his old pal Aaron Rodgers.
Is he going to take targets away?
Yeah.
Or is he now going to be covered by DB2?
Yeah.
Because now he's covered by the opponent's best guy all the time. But now with Devante Adams, you can't let Devante Adams destroy your second guy. You have to put the number 1 guy on him. So that means Garrett Wilson might be able to create a little bit more separation. Having a strong 1-2 wide receiver is really not as big of a deal as having a 1-2-3 that are good, because anything's up for grabs. Like Houston.
It'll be interesting to see how it goes for him. I could see Breece Hall benefiting more. I guess I'd buy that sooner if they can keep them honest on the passing game now a little more with having Devante Adams out there. That's going to open up the running games. I think Breece Hall could benefit. I'm not sure about Garrett Wilson.
We'll see.
Simple Jack had a lot of empty spots this week, a lot of zeros on the board for him. So really, he didn't have a chance. I had reached out to our commissioner to see, is this an all-time low scoring performance here? At the time, he was like at 49 points. So I was thinking we might make a new record. Lowest scorer ever in our league was 27.9 points. It was Simple Jack.
That's right,
again.
He did.
So Simple Jack's added a few low point totals to the list. And I
living up to his name.
That was a forgetting to set your lineup sort of thing, especially in 2020 when that low score happened in week 8. I don't think you get 27.9 points just from guys underperforming. I think he probably had a bunch of guys on bye and either forgot or just said, screw it, this week's going to be a loss.
And for the record, he might not have been able to set his lineup effectively because of environmental factors down in the South right now. You have to at least give him a small break. But then at the same time, he probably doesn't have to go to work. So that means he has more time to check his fantasy lineup while everything's getting flooded.
Priorities.
While he's in his canoe, he can check his fantasy lineup.
For the record, I'm not cold-hearted. I knew he was safe when I made these comments. I even heard he had internet back and that there was no real damage for him. So hurricane, yes, serious situation, but I'm glad everything worked out for him. I think it would have been possible to set his lineup, even in the middle of all the excitement. You got to find a way. Keep your mind off the stress of flooding.
Life finds a way.
And all that.
And his playoff life may not be around for too much longer.
No. Had a really good scoring team, but has it been 2 losses in a row?
He's lost 4 in a row. Yep,
Wow.
I'm looking
Okay.
at the standings. Yeah,
All
4
right.
in a row. The only person to have a bigger loss streak at this point is Meg because she hasn't won a game yet.
Yeah. Next, we had a matchup between Mixing It Pretty Good and No Hard Thielens. I expected No Hard Thielens players to show up more. Mixing It had a respectable score of 114. Still a lot of very solid players. Derrick Henry, of course, got you 25 plus points. Brock Purdy, 26. Chase Brown, 12. No Hard Thielens had a really rough week. A couple injuries, questionable guys for the next week, injuries in game, and then just low scoring all across most of the running backs and wide receivers. Jordan Mason was an injury in game Thursday night versus Seattle. He was out pretty much the whole second half, so he only got 8 points, which was on the lower end of what he's been scoring in relief of McCaffrey.
Hey, he had a sprained AC joint. I think that was the alleged injury. But on Yahoo, it's also saying he's questionable with illness for this upcoming week.
I didn't know about the
So
illness
I
yet.
wasn't sure if it was a lingering COVID problem or something else, but he had a shoulder injury.
Yeah,
and
attempted to
then
play through, but only had
didn't
one
make it.
second half carries, 8 fantasy points in the first half there. And then Jerome Ford also got knocked out in the second half. So he only scored 1.4 points, 2 carries, 14 yards. So that was a letdown. Calvin Ridley had a very bad game, and you shared a video with me regarding Calvin Ridley, and he
Not
had
his
8
fault.
targets. He had 8 targets. That sounds pretty good, but
He didn't manage to pull any of them in.
And why is that?
Looking at the highlight, one of them, he was not even in the picture. You never saw him other
Yeah.
than when the snap happened because that's how poorly the ball was thrown.
It was double coverage a lot of the times, underthrown, overthrown. Just none of them were even easy grabs. If he had caught any of them, you would have said that's an amazing catch.
Yeah, he would have.
His quarterback didn't make it easy on him.
I'm surprised that he didn't catch one of them, but it still would have been a very hard catch. It would have been a highlight catch.
I think maybe Alvin Kamara finished the game. He scored pretty well. 13 carries, 40 yards, a touchdown, and then 5 receptions for 24 yards. So it was still a solid game, but a few injury concerns there on No Hard Thielen's team for the next week. You had a matchup against Mitchy Mitch and came out ahead. So your season's going pretty well now after an 0-2 start.
0-2, now 4-2. 4 straight wins.
4-0 in this new season after the first 2 games. Any guys you want to highlight from your matchup on either side?
Oh gosh, man. The big thing was seeing Jordan Love really spring back to his true form. He only threw for 258 passing yards, but he was on point throwing the ball and he had 4 touchdowns. He was efficient. He looked solid. He was 22 of 32, which isn't amazing, but it's still pretty good. 8.1 yards per attempt, I think is pretty decent. He looked very comfortable. J.K. Dobbins had a pretty solid I think he only really shined in the first half, I think. Don't quote me on that. And Terry McLaurin really coming in with 2 touchdown catches, even though he didn't put up the yards.
He's been.
I was kind of surprised.
Yeah.
George Kittle. Sorry.
George Kittle, you finally started him, and he thankfully didn't let you down once you finally started him.
I did watch
his best game of the year.
Yeah, I did read up a little bit on some fantasy perspective on Kyle Pitts, and that was enough of a motivator for me to never play him again unless someone else gets injured.
Oh yeah, what was that?
A lot of it is like systematic, like his play style systematically within the Falcons in terms of play calling last year and this year have been it's not there. I don't know if it's exactly like a NFL problem or if it's more of just a Falcons problem. I would like to see him get traded to another team before the season ends. I don't think we're going to see that, but I think there is a chance of him being able to succeed on a number of different teams. Actually, I'd probably like to see him on the Jaguars. I think he would actually be really good for them, especially from what the highlights and the examples that this article gave were him, like tight ends not necessarily being on the line of scrimmage, like next to the tackle, but more spread out like a wide receiver. And it just doesn't really suit his play style as much as you think it would.
I thought you were going to make a decision this week on whether you start Travis Etienne or Tank Bigsby. But
and I started how many of them?
Neither. You started neither of them. I thought you were going to. I would have chosen Bigsby, and I was wondering if you were going to do that or stick with Etienne. But yeah, neither. That worked out fine for you. Bixby would have scored slightly more than Rico Dowdle, but nothing
Yeah.
significant more. So that worked out fine. Boy, ETN, now he's got an injury on top of lagging performance. This feels like
Breakout.
Bixby's
He might
field
break
now.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. ETN would have got you negative 0.1 points because he only had 3 rushing attempts for negative 1 yard. You would have thought that his injury would have actually come earlier in the game, but it was third quarter. He had such a small number of carries through at least the first half and part of the third quarter. I know they were managing his reps, but still, hey, at least you got Bixby from me. So maybe it'll all work out.
Yeah, I have him starting right now for this upcoming week. Bixby, that is. Last week, I didn't feel like the matchup was super favorable for Jacksonville against Chicago. Chicago's defense has actually been pretty good. As much as I didn't think they were going to be that good this year defensively, they've been pretty good. So I said, you know what? Starting Dowdle versus Detroit, I'd rather do that than start Bigsby versus Chicago. And that's just one of those gut feel things you have to feel around about. And hopefully you watch enough games and figure it out to where you make an informed decision regardless of what the quote unquote projected points are. And it didn't really hurt me too much. Only 2 points that I lost, but the potential upside that Detroit's defense isn't probably going to be as good as Chicago's felt like was a worthwhile risk to take.
Looking at Mitch's guys.
Defense really was the big one for that one. They had a return. Because it also includes special teams, right? 165 return yards, which we started tracking, I think this year, or was it last year? Because I don't think we did have return yards on the points. Don't quote me on that. Don't remember for sure. Had 5 sacks and a touchdown. That's 27.25 points in our league. That's enough to win or to be the highest point scorer on a lot of teams. Nevertheless, as a great defense, you mentioned the next one was Lamar Jackson. Respectable 20.92, but then a lot of underperformers. Saquon Barkley didn't really do too well. DK Metcalf, Pickens from Pittsburgh, Antonio Gibson from New England, Tolbert from Dallas, who I kind of expected maybe more, especially after watching part of that Detroit-Dallas game. I would think that when you're down by like 25 point or 24 points or whatever the point at the time was, so you think you would get a little bit more catches to anyone, but it just didn't really work out.
Our last matchup is Mintberry Crunch against Under the Radar. Under the Radar won that handily, 131.75 to 82.72.
And Green Bay's defense.
Yeah.
I was talking about the Green Bay's defense, I believe, last week was just, they've been hot. Normally it's been like interceptions, but this time 3 fumble recoveries. Okay.
Christian Watson finally had I don't know if you quite consider it a breakout game because it was still only 3 receptions, but at least it was a touchdown in there and double-digit fantasy points. I had expected more from Christian Watson this year and thought he'd have streakiness, but more games to the upside than we've seen so far.
How much of that was the fact that Jordan Love got injured and Malik Willis was under center and kind of ran more of a running quarterback situation to where you drop back, check your 2 quick reads. Oh, they're not open. I'm looking to run the ball. Make something with my feet, rely on Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson, and let the game come to you. And I think that's been the big thing there. If wide receivers were able to get points for blocking, I think Christian Watson and Jalen Reed especially would be much higher up in points. They've had some amazing blocks. They was like really key and instrumental to Green Bay's offense to have a lot of motion plays where one wide receiver would actually do an end around, and then the other wide receivers would have to block for them or do screen passes. So being very active with the hands, it's unfortunate, but I don't necessarily think this is going to be the regular for Christian Watson by any means, but at the same time, I don't want to say that he's not going to score closer up to an average of 7 points for the rest of the season. Right now, it's been like projected he's around 4 or 5, maybe 6. I can see him to 7 or 8, averaging the rest of the season.
Yeah,
that's not my hot take.
Over on the other side, Mary Crunch had Mark Andrews with a pretty similar game. Finally, a breakout performance in what has been a disappointing year so far. They both had 4 targets, 3 receptions, and 1 touchdown. Mark Andrews just had 66 yards and Christian Watson had 68 yards. And one of those was a 40-yard reception. So
which we get
that
bonus points
made
for.
it bonus points, yeah. But statistically, very similar performance between those two. Barry Crunch did not bother to substitute a kicker in, so that was a 0-point contribution there. I wonder if that's just, I don't want to waste a roster spot on a second kicker, so I'm going to take the hit, or if it was a forgot sort of thing.
I think with Harrison Butker being your kicker, I think I would expect to just say, I don't want to drop one of these positional players to gain a kicker temporarily because I really want to keep Harrison Butker.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
I've done
drop
that before.
Harrison
I've done
Butker
this
for
before.
sure. Yeah, I wouldn't want to drop Butker. I'd have to look through the roster and decide, is there someone I can afford to drop now that might not even get picked up? And I don't know if there is. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anyone on his team that would for sure be left.
Did Gus Edwards was he on injured reserve last week, or did he get?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like I think he was on IR, so he should have moved Gus Edwards to the IR slot.
Yeah,
and then added a kicker.
Yeah, then he could have done it. I think they didn't send him to IR until Saturday, it looks like, so that is a little short notice. He would have had to know when Yahoo updated it. Sometimes Yahoo's a little slow on putting the IR tag on the guy. But say it happened by Saturday evening, he'd have to turn around by Sunday game time and swap that out and pick someone up. But yeah, that would have been the move to do if he could have timed it right.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. One weird thing that I thought I'd run by you on Under the Radar's team, he made some moves at quarterback. Mike seems to have given up on Anthony Richardson, which it's been a disappointing year. When he has played, he hasn't been super effective, and then he's had injuries on top of it. So he went ahead and dropped Richardson, picked up Kirk Cousins instead, and plugged him in as his starting quarterback for now, leaving Aaron Rodgers on the bench. The calculus could change on that with Aaron Rodgers having Devante Adams coming in to give him more options to throw to, and maybe Rodgers becomes his starting quarterback. But I'm not sure I would have swapped Anthony Richardson out for Kirk Cousins. You would have? Okay. Cousins had one big game the week previous, so I didn't know if he was chasing performance there because a lot of the other games have been pretty middling. And as a second quarterback, I don't want Richardson as my first one, seeing what he's done or what he hasn't done this year. But as a second one, I don't mind him, so I went ahead and picked him up. I don't really have any plans for him. And in fact, it's inconvenient because his bye week is the same week as Jaden Daniels' bye week. So that's unfortunate. But I figure I'd at least pick him up so no one else would. And I could end up cutting him in a couple weeks, maybe not. But if Jaden Daniels gets injured, then suddenly I have him. And I still think there's potential upside there with Richardson that's been untapped so far. So I'd rather have him than pass him up because he's not going to be starting for me, hopefully. And it gives me some optionality if positive things do happen for him.
I don't really see much with Anthony Richardson. I'm not saying that he can't pull out some games, but he's not really the guy I want to go to. Aaron Rodgers is not necessarily the guy I would want to go to pre Devante Adams.
Yeah.
I feel like Kirk Cousins is the safer bet, the more consistent option, which is probably what he wants to shoot for. Now with Devante Adams going to the New Jersey Jets, as I like to call them, you can probably expect Mike to go ahead and swap out Kirk Cousins and put Aaron Rodgers back in that starting quarterback slot.
Yeah, I probably would at that point. But yeah, Richardson was a round 5 pick for him, so that's disappointing. But he's right in the sense that you can't stick with what the draft projections were or the draft positions. All that's out the window now. Just because you drafted a guy in the second or third round or even first round, if they haven't performed yet to this point, it might just be a wash. They're no longer worth their average draft position. It's just nothing.
Or my position to where, hey, my need is no longer that position. I need to shop him so I can get the positional needs that I have. So giving up Josh Jacobs, who I feel like is still a great performer.
Mm-hmm.
I had him last year, and I love the fact that he was on my team. I wanted him again this year, and I got him. But the struggles that I had at wide receiver with Kyle Pitts and George Kittle to start the season was enough for me to want to shop him so I could get something that's a little bit more consistent with that in mind. especially with Nick Chubb coming back. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I think I'm okay on the running back side. I need to
a lot of your
shore up those
hopes
wide receivers. So
you keep bringing up Nick Chubb. A lot of your hopes are pinned on him. So we'll have to see how he
not
actually does
really,
come back from injury.
not
I
really.
mean, you're going to feel short at running back if he doesn't come back in seamlessly and everything and underperforms.
Oh, I've got underperformers in my life. I'm okay with a little bit off, but having something that's more consistent wide receiver was definitely worth it. I mean, and I have J.K. Dobbins, Tank Bigsby. So at the worst, I just run all wide receiver tight ends for the rest of the grouping.
If that ETN and Bigsby does become a 50-50 timeshare, which
That'd be a
hasn't
little rough.
happened yet, but that'd be rough for you. So just potentially, and it can swing quickly to where your running back is your strongest position. So you trade it off and then suddenly it's your weakest. Like I've been teeter-tottering a bit with my trades, like where I'm like, I feel like I'm super strong at wide receiver, but then I got a little too strong at running back and a little weak at wide receiver. So then I try to adjust things the other way and just balance out the scales there through some moves back and forth. So with all those matchups, our overall standings are as such. It is lonely at the top with Mixing It Pretty Good standing alone at 5-1 in first place. Next closest person's No Hard Thielen still at 4-2, having lost that matchup with Mixing It Pretty Good. More than 100 points less, sitting at 712.95. I've moved up to third with my win at 4-2 as well. You are right behind me at 4-2, just the point differential there separating those spots. Crunchy Leaves is at 4-2 and number 5. Number 6, Wu Tang in 4-2. Worst eater around is the only team that can't decide if they're a winning team or a losing team, sitting at 3-3 and number 7. Mitchy Mitch is the wrong side of 500 at 2-4, and our last playoff team currently at number 8. And then our guys on the bubble are Simple Jack in 9th place, 2-4, and Under the Radar at 2-4 and 10th. I guess Berry Crunch still technically on the bubble, but sitting quite a bit further back in the points for with 544 points and at 2-4. And then way off in the distance, however lonely it is at the top, I think it must be lonelier at the bottom. The Mega sitting at 0-6 with the fewest points in the league by just a smidge with 543.13 points. Still looking for that first win there. I can only hope that it comes for her in week 8 and not week 7 against me. What do we have around the league? What games did you watch? What stood out for you?
Oh, I watched that Green Bay Cardinals game, baby. I didn't watch it live, but I did do more than just watch the key plays. I did click forward, and be like, okay, I'm going to take this game and trim it down to 40 minutes and watched a lot of the big plays. I watched the random plays and just, okay, cool. Like that didn't go well. I'm not going to watch a replay off of a 1-yard gain. I'm going to actually go ahead and go to the next play. Oh, this one broke for 25 yards. I want to see what they say about that. Green Bay looked awesome on defense. Really just hungry for the ball, something you haven't seen a little bit. I feel like I haven't seen a little bit from them. I think last year they only had 5 or 6 interceptions the whole year, and now they've got almost all of that, and now they've got a bag of chips they had 3 fumbles recovered from just this game alone. And the offense looked good. I don't know if it was just the Cardinals just being bad or their defense being great or their offense being great, like Green Bay's offense being great. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty happy with it as a fan of the team. Also having Jordan Love as a quarterback, it was a pretty awesome game to watch. I didn't really watch a whole lot of other football.
Let me say with that game before we move on that, I just saw the key plays on that one, but on the highlights, Jordan Love looked pretty impressive and deadly with his passes. Like there were some just beautiful passes in there. So I know I saw his completions percentage and it was fine. It wasn't anything amazing. So maybe the tone of the whole game wasn't as impressive. I'm not sure. I only saw key plays. But as far as the key plays went, he looked laser precision there.
The one big blemish on his on a stat line was the interception, in which case his wide receiver slipped and fell as he released the ball. So then on a hook route or something like that. So the cornerback was all by himself and was like, okay, I will take this ball since there's no wide receiver here to fight with.
Yeah.
It was not his fault. And it'll go down on him, but it doesn't really matter.
And then the only other player, we already talked about Christian Watson, but the only other player I want to highlight is Josh Jacobs. He looked fine. I'm still waiting on some positive touchdown regression for him. I feel like those are going to come at some point, and I just need to be patient because he's being perfectly serviceable without the touchdowns this year. He only has 1 touchdown through 6 games, and I'm hoping they come, and that'll make it look much better for him.
Yeah. He actually holds an NFL record that you do not want to have.
Really?
Are you from?
What is
Yeah.
it? No, I'm not.
He has the most amount of receptions without a receiving touchdotion.
Really?
What, like 207 or something?
Yeah.
It's some really high number.
I didn't know that.
He surpassed that record, I think, last week. Not last week against the Cardinals, but the week prior, I should say. They were looking for ways to get him a possible receiving touchdown last week. So then he could say, I have a receiving touchdown. I don't really care, man. We win. If I get the ball, it happens. If I don't, doesn't matter to Josh Jacobs. But to Green Bay, to like the offensive play calling, like for the offensive play calling, Jordan Love, like the whole team is like really trying to get it into his hands, which you wouldn't expect. You would think it would be the opposite. Man, I wish they would give me the ball more, like as a receiver in the red zone, so I can get a receiving touchdown because I would love to have one. And the team's like, we're focused on winning, and so therefore we're going to do whatever it takes to win. No, it's the opposite. So I thought it was funny.
He's due then.
He's due.
Hope. You got to return to that slot machine because it hasn't paid out recently. So that makes it more likely to pay out now, right?
Yeah, right. This is where we have the Anakin Skywalker meme.
I watched a lot of the 49ers. I watched the 49ers Seahawks one. 49ers looked really good. They looked really terrific the first half and wore down a little bit later and let the Seahawks get back into it. But they still looked really solid. I think they're still one of the top teams. Deebo Samuel had a 73-yard touchdown that he really showcased his speed and broke 2 tackle attempts on. The only thing I worried about him was, why are they having their most valuable wide receiver today do kickoff returns and run the ball so much? Like, I was flinching, afraid that he was going to get injured on some of those dangerous routes that he was running. And
wait, did you say Deebo Samuel is the 49ers best wide receiver to date, meaning in franchise history?
No,
I was like,
no. Just talking
excuse me.
No.
Sorry, I wanted to make sure we had that clarification.
And who is the 49ers' best wide receiver in history?
I mean, what, you want to say Jerry Rice? If you want to say Terrell Owens, I'd probably say you're garbage.
Okay. No, I wasn't trying to make any claim like that at all.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate it. It makes me feel a little bit more happy about working with you on this podcast. Otherwise, I'd be like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, guys.
And my hot take for tonight is Deebo Samuel is the greatest player to ever grace a 49ers uniform.
Oh, man, we didn't just go wide receiver. Now we're talking about any 49ers.
No, it's a hot take.
That is a spicy one. Joe Montana would have a pretty hard time with that one.
No, just the other thing that I noted from the game was this one missed call in the fourth quarter that I was worried was going to potentially swing the outcome of the game, but it didn't come to pass. There was a big missed call, even after a subsequent review, the ruling stood, where it was a punt return and it had been determined that the Seahawks player had not touched the ball when he actually had. So it should have been a 49ers ball on the recovery after a Seahawks player brushed it with his fingers clearly. And with all the angles in there, it was determined that the booth didn't have one of those angles that we had as the audience. But you could see that the fingers bent when the ball hit it and it changed the trajectory of the ball. So that could have potentially affected the game if it had gone the other way and the Seahawks had won. But yeah, the full play, Wishnowski punts 49 yards to Seattle 18. Center Pepper downed by San Francisco Graham. San Francisco challenged the kick down ruling and the play was upheld. So the ruling on the field stood. They don't have all the angles that the TV audience gets always. So that was why that call did end up getting missed and the ball went the other way from what it should have done. I saw quite a lot of the Lions-Cowboys game, but my attention waned on it because the Cowboys were just terrible. The score was 47-9 by the end of it. Dak Prescott was disappointing. No touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Prescott's now thrown 2 interceptions in 3 of his 6 games this season. That hasn't been too good for him.
Dallas in general has just been terrible.
Yeah.
I was
there's
like
players that you can use on their team, but you're using Dowdle. but even him being the RB1 is not a sure thing each week. And when you can use Prescott some weeks, but other weeks he's not going to do as well. So no one's really standing out. And even though there are some usable guys, but yeah, that game was extra one-sided. Colts Titans, I saw some of. The Colts got the win. It was against a terrible team, though. Beating the Titans isn't anything to really toot your horn about, but you got to win those divisional games. The Colts did look pretty mid, uninspiring. Flacco's holding it down, though. Flacco's doing good. He's doing what's needed from him, but it's not a team that I'm excited about watching. And I think that's the only reason why Richardson comes back when he's healthy, which could be this next week here, and he's going to be the starter again because, yeah, Flacco's done great in his service, but I feel like safer floor with Flacco, less upside. And Richardson is more of a wild card, and the Colts are not good enough to go with the safe floor right now. They need a little bit of a wild card. So that's my position, and hope for Richardson at least that he can mix it up.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're really gonna benefit from him in a close game to where he ends up going up against good pass coverage, to where he scrambles for more yards and ends up maybe breaking one loose for 40.
But yeah, that's about all I had from that game. I watched a little bit of the Jaguars Bears. Bigsby's still the most exciting running back of the two, but obviously Travis Etienne got injured. But he's going to get more time now if that hamstring injury lingers, and it can be hard to come back and reclaim a number one role that was tentative.
Especially in the running back position. And wide receiver, I think it's a little bit easier to come back into that spot. But a running back, I don't know, especially, well, Etienne's only how old now?
He is 25.
Yeah, for a 25-year-old to be basically pushed out of the league after, 3 years?
It's surprising.
It's pretty surprising to me.
He was a bell cow back. You would use the term bell cow for his role in the previous couple of years.
Reminded me of a similar to Maurice Jones-Drew situation, or maybe because I don't know, Jacksonville had Fred Taylor into Maurice Jones-Drew, and then there was some time. Who was the running back before Travis Etienne?
I can't remember anymore.
But anyway, the fact that they went through those running backs like so quickly was a little bit weird to me.
Yeah.
It could be even more than that, just more the offensive line or the scheme that the offensive coordinator is trying to run. I don't know. Leonard Fournette was the other one. Sorry.
You're right. Leonard Fournette. Yep.
Leonard Fournette into Travis Etienne, and then now into Tank Bigsby. Maurice Jones-Drew and Fred Taylor, I feel like, had been there forever in their respective roles. I know I'm wrong on that, but that's okay. I'm not claiming to be 100% right. But those are really notable names, and they did a solid job. And the fact that Etienne is number 12 in rushing yards for 1 year for Jacksonville, not overall, but for Jacksonville. Jones-Drew is number 1, then Fred Taylor, most Jones-Drew, Fred Taylor, Leonard Fournette, Fred Taylor, Travis Etienne.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. When I'm looking at this table, I definitely am shocked to see how my brain thinks Travis Etienne is here in this lineup in terms of rushing yards per like for a season, and then I open my eyes and it's not even close.
Yeah. For the Bears, DeAndre Swift with another solid game. He's been looking better. I still think, even after seeing a little bit of it, that he's very matchup dependent. So he's had 3 bad games followed by 3 good games. I'm not surprised that he did well in those 3 games, and he has the bye coming up, and I feel like there's a few more good games in them. But as I look ahead towards approaching the playoffs and playoff run, I do not like those matchups, and I think that he's more likely to regress again unless the Bears have truly transformed as a team. They've been looking increasingly better as the season goes on, but I was still trying to get some value for DeAndre Swift. 3 weeks ago, he had no value. I would have traded him for a bag of potato chips. 2 weeks ago, I was looking for trade partners after he went off for 1 game and was looking at something like him for Brandon Aiyuk, 1-1. And then Chris and I, we reapproached that trade potential. I actually approached him asking about Tyreek Hill, and he didn't come back for anything with him. So I think he's willing to wait on Hill, like you suggested, and see how he goes, see if Tua comes back. So yeah, that's fine. But he offered an Aiyuk 1-for-1 trade with Swift. I didn't like that anymore, given that their trajectories have diverged a little bit. We've had 3 great games to grow from Swift, and Aiyuk had 1 good game in there, but then not much so far this season. So I have him sweeten the pot a little bit. We went back and forth. I tried to get a defense swap and a kicker swap. He wouldn't go for that. So we ended up doing that. And then I got his Brandon Aubrey, probably one of the most reliable Cowboys players you can have, being the kicker since they're not getting into the end zone.
I think they were the worst or one of the worst teams to get into the end zone while inside the opponent's 20.
Yeah, wouldn't
Don't
surprise
quote me
me.
on that.
So I'm a little iffy on this trade, Swift for Aiyuk. I'm worried, but I have Deebo Samuel. I know you don't like to have 2 leading wide receivers in general, but he's going to be a flex guy for me. I may start him some weeks and not other weeks. Swift was winding up on the bench a lot of times. I feel like he's going to be up and down a little bit. He's on a really high streak right now, so I tried to sell for hopefully as high as I could have. Any thoughts on that trade?
No, I felt it was kind of weird to trade kickers, but at the same time, I could see how it would work around.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
I'm just saying sweeten the pot a little bit because I don't think Swift for Aiyuk straight up was quite what I wanted to do. I wouldn't
no,
have done it. I needed
I
either
I
the you're a
probably would
little
have.
more saying Aiyuk's a good deal still.
I
It's just I haven't seen quite
yeah.
enough. If I got 2 solid games from him so far, I'd feel better about him. But with only 1 solid game, I'm worried. And he didn't even benefit much when Deebo Samuel was injured. In fact, he didn't benefit really at all. He had a very
No.
low production game when Samuel was out 1 week. So I'm like, even if Samuel got injured, I can't really guarantee that's going to help Aiyuk that much. So yeah, I'm just hoping I'm buying low on him, hoping for the best. And I'm decently happy with my running backs now. I feel like I had swung away from my wide receivers a bit when I gave you Xavier Worthy and I got Josh Jacobs. That improved my running backs quite a bit, and I no longer needed Swift as much. And this week in particular, week 7 coming up, I'm going to be hurting at wide receiver with a bye week for CeeDee Lamb in there. So I actually have an empty roster spot until that trade completes on Thursday. So I need that wide receiver to plug in because I had wound up with honestly way too many running backs since I am doing the thing where I have the handcuffs for all my guys, at least as many as I can manage. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 running backs. We're getting Swift out of there. I'm going to be dropping Rashawn Johnson. I tried to give him Rashawn Johnson as well, say, hey, take the handcuff as well and give me your defense, swap defenses as well. But
Yeah.
couldn't convince him to do that. So he's going to have to get him off the waiver wire if he wants them. So that frees up 2 running back spots for me. Then I'll have easier to handle number, and that'll give me more flexibility to get kickers, defenses on bye weeks, anyone I need to just pick up to fill injuries in bye weeks. Because with 8 running backs, my roster was a little top heavy with them and hard to fill out the spots that needed attention week to week.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I also think that once Christian McCaffrey comes back, which I just looked up, might not be until week 9.
Yeah, it seems like it's getting pushed back and
Yeah,
back.
which I know is a pain, but when he does come back, that creates a lot of unknowns and lack of predictability for defenses to where I think Aiyuk is going to see a lot of benefit from additional options of
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey. Now all of a sudden you're going to have to like place someone that's quick, someone that's also able to tackle effectively on Christian McCaffrey as like coming out of as a wide receiver from the backfield. He's just a big matchup problem to where teams have to be creative, and one of the ways they would have to be creative is to take like a safety and put him on him instead of a linebacker for coverage. We'll see how Aiyuk really is able to benefit or be hindered by Christian McCaffrey. Again, that's not even like for sure week 9, but
No,
it was more of
definitely
a
not.
hey, it could be week 9. He's eligible to be activated for practice, and they have not
But
done. They've chosen
yeah.
to not do that. I think they have basically 3 weeks or something like that, or 4 weeks after they activate him for practice to where they have to actually make sure there's a roster spot for him. So it sounds like with that being considered, then week 9 is the 49ers bye. So 10 would be his first official start. That would be sensible because then he has a couple light weeks of just doing walkthroughs, getting through new playbooks, getting comfortable with that, and then go more game pace on week 9 because they have a bye. They're able to be like, okay, this is what the game situation is going to be like. How comfortable are we? Do we need to limit you? Should we limit on what you do? I don't know. I like the idea of Aiyuk probably being a big benefactor of a matchup nightmare as McCaffrey.
Yeah, fingers crossed for me. But man, McCaffrey, that's a killer number 1 pick in our draft.
Yeah, we talked about it too. Hey, we were like, Kayla's number
like,
1.
no
All right, Christian McCaffrey's off the board. Let's go.
Yeah, and just hasn't seen the field even, so it's not like he's played bad. But I guess injuries are getting to be a consistent problem with him now. So if you do get McCaffrey, you have to get Mason.
Run that risk.
And she did. So she hasn't been suffering too much because Mason kind of picks
4
up
and 2.
Right where McCaffrey lets off. And Mason's doing a great job and has done a great job in the past as well, covering for McCaffrey. But yeah, it's gotten to be just too much of a regular thing with him that you got to have him in there as your backup. That's like the most important handcuff in the league to have.
Yeah.
That's all the games I caught anything from. Do you know any others that we didn't see that you heard stuff about after the fact?
I had extremely limited viewership of the Bills-Jets game. I'm surprised it was that close. I'm surprised that the Bills looked so bad. There were a lot of penalties. From what I had heard, I didn't watch enough of the game to know. Breece Hall did look good from what I had seen. He had a lot of pretty good plays with positive yards. Aaron Rodgers looked pretty mortal, like I had been talking about. He's not really playing like his quote-unquote old self or like his MVP self. He only threw 1 interception, but when you have Aaron Rodgers, you're expecting to throw minimal interceptions because he's only had 1, 2, 3 years to where he's thrown more than 10 interceptions, which is pretty remarkable. I would expect a quarterback to throw at least 10 interceptions a lot of times, especially when they're throwing, hey, I threw 35 touchdowns or 32 touchdowns, 48 touchdowns. Like to throw 48 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, that's ridiculous. And he did that.
Yeah.
He's not playing the same way. He's not thinking the same way. He's not reading the routes the same way. He blamed the game-sealing interception on Mike Williams not running the right route, which, don't get me wrong, I've never played football, so I don't analyze football enough to be on that level of saying, yeah, he ran the wrong route. It just doesn't – it's either him on the team or the Jets being the Jets. I would want to say yes. It didn't really work too well with Brett Favre, and then they get another Packers quarterback long after his prime, and it's more of the same.
Yeah, that I agree that that game was closer than I expected as well. I was just looking through Josh Allen's stats for this year, and the passing yards are a lot less than I would have expected. His highest passing yards in a game this year is 263. He's had 3 games sub 200.
And not even like close yards, sub 200.
Like, yeah.
Like 131,
yards.
139.
Yeah.
180, which is close. But
so that is pretty shocking to me. But hey, he's going to get some help now from his wide receivers because Amari Cooper is getting sent over there, which could Amari Cooper have found a better place to go that was an option? He's going from Deshaun Watson
to Josh Allen.
Thank you. He's on my team. Thank you so much. His value for any sort of trade or even being startable was just tanking. And this gives him new life potential on my team.
Just going from the actual city of Cleveland to the city of Buffalo is an upgrade in my opinion, regardless if you play football or not.
Yeah. So
I don't want to be in Cleveland.
He had to start week 7 for my team because I have no more wide receivers to not start everyone right now. But now I feel better about it, even though he's not going to have time to do much with the playbook. I still feel better about it. Like they can just run a very simple package with him, and his upside is going to be better than it was with Deshaun Watson because Watson was just not giving him much to work with other than targets that weren't very catchable.
Yeah.
I feel like it could have mirrored what you showed me from Calvin Ridley's previous game. Receptions and barely in his vicinity.
I was reading a couple articles that kind of came up in my little feed on my phone. and Deshaun Watson is having a historically terrible year. I believe the stat that they were using was quarterback rating. And now looking it up, he has a 21.7 quarterback rating. That's really bad in case anyone really
it's a
doesn't
little
know.
bad.
Yeah, Will Levis is a 27.3. Jacoby Brissett has a 39.5. Garner Minshew's got a 40.2. Bo Nix a 44. Caleb Williams 45.5. And you're at the bottom of that list. You see a bunch of career backups and rookies in that list, and you're at the bottom of it. And you've been in the league for how long now? Stick a fork in him. He's done.
Agreed.
Get him out.
What else do we want to cover tonight?
So we were talking about trades.
Yeah.
I have yet to find one, but I am diligently trying to make a trade with Worst Eater around.
Yeah, I was trying with him for a while too. Even when I saw some matchups with Garrett Wilson was a big target of mine, and now I'm like, less sure. And anyway, Brandon Aiyuk filled that need for me. It was like an either or at one point. Can I get Aiyuk or Wilson a couple weeks ago? And then that didn't happen at that time.
Yeah, I'm right now trying to go for Sam Darnold's been a really great quarterback. I don't know if it's been enough to be a starting quarterback. And I already have Jordan Love.
Yeah.
But Jordan Love has also already been injured this year. So having a quality backup for me feels like a lot of insurance. And it's also his backup. So he should also feel pretty comfortable with shopping him because it's a backup quarterback. It's not someone that's seeing your roster and impacting your roster on a week to week. I'm trying to get Tyron Tracy Jr. and Puka Nuka.
Yeah. I don't think I made an offer for Puka. I can't remember for sure. Don't quote me on that. But I had done research on Puka as well. One of the things that's challenging with Yahoo is that the projections do not reflect people on IR a lot of times. They assume the rosiest possible scenario, and he's coming back the second he's eligible and the injury is going to heal perfectly. So I'm drafting up these trades and the numbers are just ridiculous, but I'm I don't think Puka's going to play in all the games that Yahoo's saying he's going to play in. So
no, yeah, of course not.
That makes it look different than it really is in reality. So that made it a little more challenging with Puka Nuka.
I had a trade set up to where, according to Yahoo, it was a pretty even split. This isn't even a final proposal. I originally proposed sending Derek Carr, Xavier Worthy, and Tank Dell or something like that for Sam Darnold, Tyron Tracy Jr., and Puka Nuka, which I can understand why that didn't go through. It doesn't shock me, but it was something where it was close that we could both benefit a little bit. He basically was like, I would start Darnold over Carr any day of the week, and I didn't bother debating, saying, hey, that's your backup quarterback, right? That doesn't mean anything because you're not starting him. And also Puka Nuka is still on IR, so you can fit the immediate need that Puka Nuka can't fit because he's not going to be back for at least another week. Now, at this point, I am potentially looking at sending him Tank Dell, Jerry Jeudy, Derek Carr, and Nick Chubb for Tyron Tracy, Sam Darnold, and Puka Nuka.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to really open up the player's performance and compare them. Just hearing it, that sounds tough for me to accept if I was on the receiving end, because I'd just be holding so much hope out for Puka, I guess, more than anyone else.
But Nick Chubb, he would be getting Nick Chubb in this deal. They're in very similar situations. With Nick Chubb, I feel like being in a game ready situation earlier than Puka Nuka. So you get an extra week.
Earlier, for sure. Earlier.
Get an extra week of Nick Chubb, and you don't know how either of them is really going to perform long term. Partially, one of the reasons why I like this is I feel like Tyron Tracy Jr. is going to upset Devin Singletary for the RB1. So this is all a feeling, though. So
yeah,
given that there is risk here for me to take this or to propose this, but he gets the benefit of Tank Dell and Nick Chubb, which I feel like that's a better deal than Puka Nuka, Tyron Tracy.
I felt like it's hard to get 4 for 3s done just because I don't know if people feel like you're throwing so much at them, it's overhauling their team too much. I've heard that from people. They're like, I don't know if I just want to swap out half my team.
So one thing is he does have 2 defenses right now. So to me, that would be an easy way to fit the extra roster slot is you get rid of one of the defenses. Also sitting 3-3 in 7th place in the league right now. And this is the time in the league where you're finally getting a good idea of who the playoff teams are. And being 3-3, he's the only team at 3-3 has less points than Mitchie Mitch, who's in 8th place.
And he definitely needs the help at running back. His running back situation is rough. I think 2 weeks ago, he only had 2 active running backs. So there's definitely opportunity for a trade with Worst Eater around because he needs the help at running backs. Cam Akers has filled in, but that's not a long-term solution at all. Yeah, so really just having Montgomery, Singletary, and then Tyrone Tracy is not that solid of a group there. I don't see any problem with the Sam Darnold part at all. I think that's easy to justify giving up. But yeah, I don't know. It just depends how you think Puka's going to return. That's the big question mark.
Hold on. I'm trying to type this up because I think I'm going to submit it. I'm not expecting it to go through. All right. I'm shipping it. We'll see what he does.
What happens. I'd love to see some other players get involved in trades. I've been involved in 3 trades right now. People get out there and make some offers. But yeah, I think definitely I've seen people don't want to overhaul their rosters too much. They want to do the safer trades. So like I have more responses to 1-for-1 or 2-for-2 trades. I have lots of unaccepted responses over the course of several seasons of 3-for-3s, 4-for-3s. It's just hard to get people to want to do all the mental processing on what would be the benefit of doing this, overhauling that amount of my roster.
I would normally agree and be on that same side, but I'm trying to push for playoffs, and I also see a chance of picking up a valuable second quarterback to where Jordan Love's already been injured.
Mm-hmm.
I feel, like I said, going off of a feeling Tyrone Tracy Jr. might take over RB1 for the New York Giants. So that means I'd be trading RB1 for RB1, maybe not quite as good as an RB1, but I'd still be getting an RB1 back. Puka is going to be my top wide receiver to where it's worth it to take that risk. Actually, no, he wouldn't be. He'd be he'd be wide receiver too. Jamar Chase, yeah.
Yeah.
But that would remove a lot of questions at my wide receiver because I'd have.
I mean, the move definitely makes sense. You got to know
McLaurin, Stephon Diggs.
Yeah. You got to know if you're trying to win now with your trade or if you're trying to do a playoff push. And you know that at this point, having won 4 of the last 4, you're looking at the playoffs. You're on the right side of that. So you're trying to get better later at the expense of potentially now. I don't even know if that hurts you too much now. Just waiting on Puka, but hopefully not too many weeks. Yeah.
The Yahoo evaluation said it was like we both basically gain 8 points throughout the season.
And I think Eater's in the position. He needs to win now at 500. Yeah, he needs some more wins in there. So maybe you can't afford to wait on Puka. And I'm in the position similar to you where I'm feeling pretty good about playoffs again. So I'm okay waiting on Brandon Aiyuk and hoping that he shows some more as the season goes on. And I think Swift is in his best stretch of games right now. He has a couple more really good matchups for him. So he's probably going to have some good weeks coming up. But I did not like the playoff lineup for him at all. So that's why I look to move on from him now and really focus on how it's going to affect me in the last 4 games or so of the season.
You're also sitting at a pretty respectable 678 points for, second most amongst all the 4-2 teams. And there's second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth all sitting 4-2. Being number 3 on the list of all the teams to number 2 amongst the 4-2 teams gives you some confidence of, hey, I don't necessarily need to win now because you do hold that tiebreak over a bunch of other different teams.
Yeah, I don't think I'm in danger of missing the playoffs at this point. Knock on wood.
Oh, this is glass. This is glass. Help!
Yeah. So some bench blunders in the awards section.
Go for it. Yeah, do the awards section. Let's go.
Yeah, feel free to add any that you like any that you saw there. But for waiver wire wizard nominees, this isn't a nominee, but it's just an observation. Isaiah likely got picked up by under the radar. I think he is just getting hot swaps back and forth to the waiver wire like
Yep.
every week. People are just chasing his good weeks and abandoning him after his bad weeks. I predicted that after his week one. Yeah. Sure enough, he didn't follow it up. He had a good game later on, a few games later. Mitch picked up Tampa Bay, which normally I wouldn't note the defense, but as you mentioned earlier, it was just like his top performer in a massive 27.25 point performance against the Saints, who are really struggling at this point. So that's a nominee given the magnitude of the contribution. Crunchy Leaves got Damian Pierce, who seems to have leapfrogged Cam Akers for the number 2 role. And he has a surprisingly big game considering Joe Mixon was back. I wouldn't have expected that, but it was a good performance this week. But my waiver wire wizard, I'm going to give to Wu-Tang Financial for picking up Juju Smith-Schuster. He posted a big line in week 5. And with Rashee Rice out for the season, Hollywood Brown still out for the season as well, he could be the biggest beneficiary of that in target as well. So we'll have to see if its performance continues, but I think he's going to have a lot of targets and a lot of opportunities. You like that pickup as well, it sounded like?
Yeah, I respect it.
Any others that stood out to you? Those are the ones I noted.
No, I wasn't sure that Rashee Rice is going to be out for the season. A lot of people have been saying that's going to be an out for the season following the surgery. I have had, for the record, I have had ACL surgery before. So I learned a little bit about some of the different ligaments in your knee. And the big ones are going to be your ACL and MCL. And he had a PCL or PLC tear.
I am no expert on this, but I'm just reading it now. It says LCL. How does that?
So the LCL and the PCL, if I remember correctly, are more minor. Sometimes you'll need surgery on them, and oftentimes for normal person, not NFL football players, you'd be like, okay, if I need it, I can get surgery on it. I'm probably going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks. But then again, this is not a normal person. This is someone that's playing in the NFL, to where you need to be 100% or really close to 100% to be able to actually perform on a week-to-week basis, to be able to keep you on the actual roster slot. So to me, it was weird to hear that he was going to be out for the season.
It seems a bit rosy thinking he's going to come back.
Yeah.
Oh, he's on waivers now. You going to pick him up?
To be honest, yes, I was thinking about picking him up and putting him in my IR slot because I removed Nick Chubb from my IR slot.
Yeah, if you removed him, I
have a spot
back this year
for late enough in the season to where, especially with the type of surgery he might have had, it requires something a little bit more invasive. Man,
I mean, he's still 50% owned, but
the second-year wide receiver should be roughly out 3 months and be able to return in health in 2025. 3 months. How far? 3 months.
We're done.
We'll be done in 3
by
months.
the end of the year.
Yeah, that does feel a little bit. It's weird if it doesn't feel like we're in week 6, or that we finished week 6.
We basically have 2.5 months left of the season.
All right, never mind. I'm completely okay with passing on Rashee Rice.
So yeah, Wu-Tang Financial gets the award there with a solid pickup looking forward and planning out the rest of the season. As for bench blunders, I don't really have any nominees because, unfortunately, hurricane aside, it was simple jack this week. Any way you cut it, just number of players, very low point total scored. 5 starters with 0 points on his starting lineup. 2 of those were in-game injuries, so not his fault. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Goddard. But Brian Robinson Jr. was ruled out the day before, so internet and flooding taken into account, you had the opportunity to swap him out. And then 2 other guys were just on bye, so you got to take care of that much earlier. Justin Jefferson and Jason Sanders. You got to make sure those guys are nowhere near your starting lineup pretty early in the week in case something does happen. Playing for volcanoes, earthquakes, floods, everything, tsunamis,
nuclear fallout.
Yeah. Let your final act be to put forth a winning football week. Priorities. I'm glad that they obviously escaped any damage, but yeah, there was just such an extreme nature of
his team this week that I'm not nominating anyone else.
It was a little bit easier in the beginning of the season too.
Yeah. I have I think it's a week 10 that looks pretty rough, and I might be like, oh, do I want to struggle to replace all these guys or just leave some empty slots? So it could be me week 10. I'll look at that now and see. Of course, I have a couple guys changing teams, but no one in week 10. So I got Josh Jacobs and Kenneth Walker out, and Alexander Madison to boot. So yeah, I'm going to be really hurrying at running back that week.
Yes.
I don't know what I'll do yet. I have no plans yet.
Or you just tank that week.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to find just 2 viable running backs. Maybe by then I'll have Chuba Hubbard and Jonathan Brooks both in, and I'll just have both of them as the starting running backs. That's possible. Brooks could be back.
I did that. I did Tank Digby and Travis Etienne.
Yeah,
it could work. It could work for you. I'm just saying.
It could happen. And then the rest would just be wide receivers.
I've won my last 4. You can do it.
So then hot takes is our last thing we normally wrap up with. We talked about what ones we had last week. Do you have anything going forward that you want to shoot out into the world here?
I'll put one out there. Our top 8 is our playoff teams.
Okay. All right.
Our current top 8. So I'd be saying mixing it pretty good. No Hart Thielens, no fade on Jaden. Chase Me If You Can Volume 2. Crunchy Leaves, Wu-Tang Financial, Worst Eater Around, and Mitchy Mitch are going to the playoffs. And Simple Jack, Under the Radar, Minberry Crunch, and Meg are missing the playoffs.
Yeah.
We're not even halfway through the season, so...
Yeah. I'd take that side of it, too.
Wow.
Who knows?
It's not a hot take, then?
No, I don't know that it's not a hot take. It's still not super likely to happen, so it could be hot. But I can't disagree with you on it. I just think it's a reasonable take. # reasonable take.
Shoot, I got to change it up. What's yours? What you got?
All right. So mine, I'm looking at the top of the league in the NFL, and I see 2 undefeated teams here coming into the week. We have the Vikings and the Chiefs. I've said I don't know how strong of an undefeated team the Chiefs are, and I'm wondering how bold I want to go on this hot take. I at least want to say that the 49ers beat the Chiefs this week, but do we want it to be spicy hot or just medium hot?
Depends on how spicy you can take it.
Let's be spicy hot because this is low stakes here. All right. After this week, we have no undefeated teams in the NFL. The 49ers are going to beat the Chiefs. The Lions are going to beat the Vikings. Chiefs have had a number of close games against lesser opponents. The 49ers are probably the best team they faced this year, I think. So I'm going to have them lose to the 49ers. I think the spread has been pretty small for both of these games. Vikings and Chiefs are favored, but barely. And then the Lions have been really good historically against the Vikings the past several years. So they've given them trouble. So I could see them beating the Vikings too. That one I almost view as less likely, but it could happen. So I'm gonna go with it. Jared Goff's gonna have a big game. That's not part of my bet, but that's a way in which obviously the Lions could get the win there. See it. So yeah, no undefeated teams. We won't even have to have the suspense of who's the last undefeated because they're both going down at the same time.
Roughly. Hey, that means there's like still a couple seconds.
I don't know who plays last. Yeah, I don't know
who does play last.
Let's see. Chiefs 49ers at 4:25 on Sunday. Where were Vikings? I missed them. Vikings at 1. Yeah. Okay, the Chiefs will be the last undefeated team, technically.
Unless they get some sort of weird delay of game situation to where, hey, we lost power inside the stadium, and so therefore we have to delay the game for a few hours.
Yeah. So that one's I'm probably going to lose that one, but I've gotten power hungry on the hot takes. I got a big head because I've had some success the past couple weeks on them.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. So I've got to try to predict things that I have no business predicting now until I'm wrong. Do we have anything else?
I think we got it. I think we're all done.
Good luck on your trade, sir. We'll find out if it goes through.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't expect it to. I'm okay with it not. But I don't know. I want to change it up a little bit.
All right. One more hot take. How many trades do I get done this season?
How many you got already? I have no idea.
I have 3. If this one goes through, I have 3.
So if this one goes through, you have 3, which I expected this one to go through. 6.
Think I'll get all the way 6? Okay.
Well, when's the trade deadline?
I don't know. I don't know where to find
That's the problem.
It's not that far away. We're closer than halfway. We're further along than halfway to the trade deadline for sure. So I don't know that I get to 6. Could probably get 4, maybe 5. But I mean, it's in our opener. I'm a trade addict. I can't help it.
Yeah.
Even if it moves me sideways, I'm gonna do trades.
November 16th. So in a month?
Yeah, I could do another 2 in that time, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think I can do 3.
I think I would say 5. I would say 5.
All right, yeah. I'll try.
You don't have to.
I want to.
I must beat the spread.
All right.
Cool. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I guess see you next week.
Next week for a super special episode. It's going to be our mid-season special. 7 games in the book. We'll try to have a few segments for it to celebrate. Maybe have a special guest in there. We'll see who we can get on. Hope it's going to be a good one for y'all. See you then.
See ya.
That's it for this episode of the Smashville Fantasy Football Podcast. As always, we have aspirations of adequacy, so come back and we'll try to do a bit better next time. Who knows, we may even reveal that one sneaky trick guaranteed to win your fantasy league. But until then, keep those trades rolling and get your lineup set before kickoff. See you next week.